listening to Cassphere Podcast.
Welcome back to the deep dive where we sift through all those sources and pull out the important stuff. Today we're talking about AI and global politics. It's been in the news a lot lately, especially with, Trump back in office.
Right.
We'll be looking at two main things. AI's role in decisions about nuclear weapons and that recent agreement between Biden and Xi.
Yeah, that was an interesting one.
Definitely. Before Trump's inauguration, Biden and Xi Jinping met one last time. Did you know that meeting went on for almost 2 hours?
Wow, that's longer than I would have thought.
Right, and they actually agreed on something pretty big about AI. A real surprise, really.
I think a lot of people were surprised by that.
So tell me, what was so significant about this agreement? What made it such a big deal?
Well, for the first time, China agreed that humans should be in control when it comes to nuclear weapons, not AI.
Oh, wow.
They've always pushed back on that kind of discussion before, even canceling a nuclear arms control meeting back in July.
So why the change of heart now?
I think there's a growing awareness of the potential dangers of AI, especially when it comes to something as serious as nuclear weapons. Imagine a world where algorithms are deciding whether to launch nukes.
Yeah, that's a scary thought.
Exactly. So this agreement is a major step towards making sure that humans stay in control of these critical decisions.
It's reassuring to know we're not letting machines decide the fate of the world just yet.
Right.
So can you break down the agreement for us? What exactly did they agree on?
Basically, both sides emphasize that humans need to be the ones making the decisions about using nuclear weapons. That's according to the White House statement anyway. They also stress the need for prudent and responsible AI development, particularly when it comes to the military. And, China's foreign ministry statement said similar things, emphasizing that they want to avoid another Cold War. It seems both sides understand that they need to be careful and responsible when it comes to AI, especially for military uses.
It's good to see that even with all the political disagreements, they can agree on the seriousness of this issue.
Definitely.
But the meeting wasn't all serious talk about nukes and AI. There were some other interesting takeaways.
Oh, absolutely. For one, it looks like they made some progress on getting those U.S. citizens who are detained in China released.
It's a bit of good news, right? A little hope amidst all the tension.
Definitely a positive development. And Biden also put pressure on Xi to, try to get North Korea to stop supporting Russia's war in Ukraine. It shows they're still focused on global stability.
Okay, so we've got Biden leaving office, Trump coming back in. Things are definitely about to change.
For sure.
What do you think this means for the future of AI, especially with some of the things Trump talked about during his campaign? He said he'd get rid of Biden's AI executive order, right?
Yeah, he did. That order set some standards for AI development, things about safety and privacy. But the Republicans called it dangerous and said it was blocking AI innovation. And then there's the whole thing about his proposed DOGE department, which he suggested Elon Musk could lead.
Wait, remind me, what was that DOGE thing again?
DOGE stands for the Department of Government Efficiency. It was basically his idea to use technology to improve how the government works.
Ah, so a tech makeover for the bureaucracy. Sounds ambitious.
It was a bold idea for sure.
So how do you think all this will actually affect AI policy?
Well, if we look at what Trump's done in the past and what he said during the campaign, I think we can expect to see a lot of deregulation, a more hands-off approach, with the focus on encouraging innovation and getting rid of anything they see as slowing down AI.
So less regulation, more AI companies. Sounds like it could lead to some rapid growth.
It could, but we have to remember that rapid growth can also come with risks, especially with something as powerful as AI. Like we talked about earlier, if we move too fast without thinking about safety and ethics, it could have some serious unintended consequences.
Right, the whole move fast and break things approach might not be the best fit for AI.
Exactly. It's a tough balance between pushing for innovation and making sure we're doing it responsibly.
And then you have Elon Musk in the mix. Having him involved could shake things up, don't you think?
Oh, absolutely. He's a big advocate for responsible AI development, but his businesses like Tesla and Neuralink could create some conflicts of interest. It's a fascinating situation. A president who loves innovation, a possible new government department focused on technology, and Elon Musk potentially advising on AI policy. Things could get very interesting.
Definitely. And we haven't even touched on how all this will play out with the whole U.S.-China rivalry.
Yeah.
The competition between those two is a huge driver of AI development right now.
You're right. That's a major factor to consider.
So how do you think Trump's America First approach will affect the global AI landscape? Will it turn into some kind of tech showdown?
Well, based on his past actions and what he said, I think he's going to focus on keeping the U.S. ahead in AI. That might mean stricter controls on exporting AI technology to keep it out of China's hands.
Wait, so you're saying he might try to limit the flow of AI tech to China? Wouldn't that hurt American companies that do business globally?
It's a tricky situation, for sure. There's the economic side to consider and the strategic side. They want to stay ahead. But cutting off tech transfer could backfire and hurt U.S. businesses and the whole AI ecosystem.
It's a complicated game, and the stakes are high. But what about open source AI? Where does that fit into all of this?
That's a great question. What happens to open source AI under a Trump administration is going to be interesting to watch. On the one hand, open source is great for U.S. companies. It gives them access to tons of talent and resources, and it encourages collaboration and innovation.
It's like a global brainstorming session for AI, right?
Yeah, exactly. But the thing is, open source AI also helps potential rivals like China. They can use the freely available tools and knowledge to boost their own AI capabilities.
So do you think Trump will try to control open source AI? Isn't that kind of impossible, like trying to put a genie back in the bottle?
That's the big question. It's a tough situation. Trying to restrict open source AI could stifle innovation and just drive development underground. It's a real dilemma.
So basically, we're in for a wild ride.
I think that's a safe bet.
Well, we've covered a lot of ground today. From that surprising Biden-Xi agreement to the potential changes in AI policy under Trump, it's clear we're entering a new era. But let's switch gears for a minute and talk about the economics of it all. Trump's always been a businessman, so how might his AI policies affect the U.S. economy?
Well, if we look back at what he said during the campaign and his general approach to, economic policy, it seems likely that he'll really focus on deregulation and giving incentives for people to invest in AI.
Like tax breaks and stuff.
Exactly. Cutting red tape and just generally making the U.S. the most attractive place to be for AI development.
So a make AI great again kind of thing.
Pretty much, yeah. And a lot of experts think this could really lead to a boom in AI investment. We're already seeing a lot of venture capital flowing into AI startups, and a Trump presidency could really accelerate that trend.
So more money, more companies, that's got to be good for the economy, right? More jobs, more innovation, everybody wins.
Well, it's not quite that simple. There are some potential downsides to think about, too. This big push for AI development could come at the cost of ethics and safety. Remember all those concerns we talked about earlier?
You mean the potential risks that come with moving too fast?
Exactly. Silicon Valley loves that move fast and break things mentality, but when you're dealing with something as powerful as AI, the stakes are way higher.
Yeah, the consequences could be a lot more serious.
Right. Rushing into development without thinking about safeguards could lead to unintended consequences, like people losing their jobs, algorithmic bias, even AI being used for malicious purposes.
Okay, so it's not all sunshine and roses, even if there is economic growth. Let's zoom out a bit and look at the global picture. How do you think Trump's America First approach will play out in the U.S.-China rivalry when it comes to AI?
That's where things get really interesting. His America First approach could mean protectionist policies, things to protect American AI companies from competition abroad.
Like tariffs on AI products coming from other countries.
Exactly. Or maybe restrictions on foreign investment in U.S. AI companies, that sort of thing.
Hold on. Didn't Trump criticize China for doing stuff like that?
He did, yeah. And that's what some critics are pointing out. They're saying these kinds of protectionist measures could backfire and end up hurting the U.S. economy in the long run. They could lead to trade wars, retaliation, disruptions in global supply chains.
And speaking of supply chains, what about the semiconductors that are so important for the whole AI industry?
Right. Those are crucial. The global semiconductor industry is super complex, with most production concentrated in just a few countries, like Taiwan and South Korea. Trump's policies, especially his stance on China, could really mess with this delicate balance.
And that could lead to
shortages, price hikes for the chips that are used in AI systems. It could have a big impact.
So basically, one policy change can have ripple effects all over the AI ecosystem.
Exactly. Everything's connected. That's why it's so important to look at the bigger picture and think about all the potential consequences of these decisions.
Okay, so we've talked about how Trump's policies could affect the economy, but how do you think this competition with China will actually play out in the AI field under his leadership?
I think it's safe to say the competition will only get fiercer. Both countries see AI as essential, not just for the economy, but for national security, too. I think Trump will double down on trying to keep the U.S. in the lead, which could make things more confrontational with China.
So are we headed for a tech Cold War?
It's definitely a possibility. We're already seeing signs of it, like the U.S. putting restrictions on Chinese tech companies and being really cautious about Chinese investment in American tech startups, like what happened with Huawei, for example.
Yeah, that was a big deal. So if we're going down this road of confrontation, what does it mean for everyone else? Will other countries have to pick a side?
That's a real worry. This rivalry between the U.S. and China could split the global AI landscape into separate camps, which could slow down progress overall. It could also make it harder to come up with global standards and ethical frameworks for AI, which means the risk of misuse and unintended consequences goes up.
It's a sobering thought for sure. What about the people who are pushing for international cooperation on AI? Is there any hope for a more collaborative approach?
There are definitely people calling for a more multilateral approach where everyone works together. They're saying we need shared norms, standards, ethical frameworks, that sort of thing. But it's hard to say how much traction those efforts will get in this current political climate.
Yeah, cooperation doesn't seem like a priority when you've got superpowers fighting for dominance. But let's try to stay optimistic. Are there any bright spots in all of this uncertainty?
Well, one positive thing is that there's more and more awareness of the ethical and social implications of AI. There are a lot more discussions happening now about things like algorithmic bias, data privacy, the impact of AI on jobs.
So even with all the potential for competition and tension, people are starting to realize that AI needs to be developed responsibly.
Exactly. It's crucial to have these conversations and make sure AI is being used to benefit humanity as a whole, not just for power or profit.
Well, we've certainly covered a lot of ground, the economic side of Trump's AI policies, the potential for a tech Cold War, the ethical challenges. It's a complex and constantly changing landscape, and it's going to be a challenge to navigate it all.
It definitely will be, and it's something we'll all need to pay close attention to in the years to come.
Speaking of navigating this complex landscape, we've got one more part of this deep dive to go. In the last couple parts, we've been looking at the potential impact of a second Trump presidency on AI, everything from those immediate policy changes to the economic ripple effects and that looming U.S.-China rivalry. So now let's think about the long game. What could be the lasting impact of Trump's AI policies, both for the U.S. and for the world?
Well, we're kind of in the realm of speculation here, but based on what we've seen so far and what Trump said, we can make some educated guesses. One possible outcome is that the global AI landscape ends up more fragmented, with the U.S. and China leading their own separate spheres of influence.
So kind of like a digital iron curtain, with each side developing AI according to their own values and priorities.
Yeah, that's a simplified way to put it, but you get the idea. It could really affect international cooperation, data privacy, maybe even human rights.
Wouldn't that kind of fragmentation slow down progress in AI overall? It seems like collaboration, sharing knowledge and resources would lead to faster advancements.
That's a good point. A world divided on AI could mean a lot of wasted effort and resources, slower innovation. And it could make it harder to come up with global standards and ethical frameworks, which could make misuse and unintended consequences more likely.
It reminds us that AI doesn't stop at borders, right? An algorithm developed in one country can easily be used in another, for good or for bad.
Absolutely. That's why it's so important to have dialogue and cooperation, even when there's a lot of political tension. The challenges AI brings up are global challenges, and they need global solutions.
So even if Trump's pushing an America First agenda, you're saying that ultimately everyone needs to find a way to work together on AI.
That's the hope, anyway. Going it alone might seem good in the short term, but for AI to develop responsibly and sustainably, we need a global perspective and agreement on some basic principles.
Okay, so let's talk about things on the home front. What kind of long-term impact could Trump's policies have on American society?
Well, we talked about how deregulation and pushing for rapid development could lead to a lot of innovation and economic growth, but couldn't it also make existing inequalities worse and create new social problems?
Yeah, definitely. There are a few challenges to think about. One is the whole issue of job displacement. The fact is, AI is going to automate some tasks and even whole industries, which means job losses in certain areas.
You mean like robots taking over all the jobs and leaving millions of people unemployed? It might not be quite that dramatic, but it's a valid concern. The important thing to remember is that AI is also going to create new jobs, particularly jobs related to developing, implementing, and maintaining AI systems.
So it's more about people needing to adapt to the changing job market, learning new skills for these new jobs.
Right. Investing in education and training programs to help people get the skills they need to thrive in an AI-driven economy is going to be essential. And it's not just about jobs either. Algorithmic bias is a major concern.
Right, because AI systems are trained on data. And if that data has biases built in, the algorithms will be biased too.
Exactly. That can lead to discrimination in all sorts of areas. Hiring, lending, even the criminal justice system.
So it's not just about the technology itself, but also the data it uses and the potential for that data to reinforce existing societal biases.
Precisely. We need to make sure that AI systems are fair, transparent, and accountable. And that means building ethical considerations into the design and development process right from the start.
What about the possibility of more surveillance and less privacy? AI systems can be used to track people, monitor their behavior, collect huge amounts of personal data.
That's a valid concern. Finding the right balance between security and privacy is going to be a major challenge in the age of AI. It's going to be a tricky one to figure out.
It seems like we've got a lot on our plate, this potential for a divided global AI landscape, all the economic shifts, the social challenges, the ethical dilemmas, the worries about surveillance. It's a pretty complex picture.
It is. The future of AI is complex, it's constantly evolving, and it's full of both promise and risk. As we've seen, the decisions made during a Trump presidency could really shape how things turn out.
Well, thanks for joining us on this deep dive into the world of AI. It's been fascinating, even if a little bit daunting at times. We hope you've learned something from our conversation. Until next time, stay curious, stay informed, and thanks for listening.